Your coworker just bought a house. Not a starter condo, not a fixer-upper, a real house. 3 bedrooms, a backyard, a quiet street you can't even afford to park on. They're scrolling through the listing on their phone while you're reheating leftovers in the office microwave, pointing out the granite countertops like it's no big deal. Their combined income is around $120,000. You make 75. You're not reckless with money. You don't carry credit card debt. You pack your lunch most days. You track your spending. And yet you're paying $1,800 a month for a one-bedroom apartment where the kitchen is so small you can open the fridge or the oven, but not both at the same time. Meanwhile, their mortgage is $1,600 for a house that's 3 times the size. And that's the moment something breaks in your brain, because no matter how you run the numbers, it doesn't feel fair. Here's the part nobody says out loud. It's not fair. And it's not you. It's math, and the math has been quietly punishing single people for decades. Not because anyone hates you personally, but because the entire economic system was built on the assumption that adults come in pairs. My name is Nick, and today we're talking about something most people would rather ignore. Being single in 2026 isn't just emotionally lonely sometimes. It's financially brutal. This isn't dating advice. This isn't about finding the one. This is about cold, boring, ruthless economics. By the end of this, you're going to understand exactly how much extra money you're losing every year simply because you don't have someone to split bills with, and why the so-called American dream was never priced for solo players. Let's start with housing, because that's where the pain is loudest. If you live alone in any decent city, you're forced into a terrible deal by default. A 2-bedroom apartment rents for about $2,400 a month. A 1-bedroom rents for $1,800. Logically, you'd expect half the space to cost half the price, but that's not how it works. You're paying 75% of the cost for 50% of the space. That's not a discount. That's a markup for being alone. Meanwhile, a couple splits that 2-bedroom, $1,200 each. You're paying $600 more every single month for less space, fewer amenities, and the joy of doing all the cleaning yourself. That's $7,200 a year gone before utilities even enter the conversation. And utilities make it worse. Internet doesn't cost half as much just because you're one person. Electricity doesn't scale down proportionally. Trash fees don't care that you live alone. You're paying almost the same baseline costs as a household, but with one income instead of two. There's no economy of scale in being single. Everything costs almost the same, except there's no one to split it with. That's the hidden tax nobody puts on a spreadsheet. Then there's food, which somehow manages to be even more insulting. Grocery stores are not designed for individuals. They're designed for families. Bulk pricing rules everything. The large pack of chicken is cheaper per pound. The family-size bag of rice is dramatically cheaper. The big box of paper towels costs less per roll than the small one. But you can't take advantage of that because you're one person. Half of it will expire. The rest will sit in your cabinet forever. So you buy smaller quantities at higher prices. You pay the single-person premium on nearly every item you put in your cart. Meal planning just adds salt to the wound. Recipes are written for 4 people. You either eat the same meal for days straight or throw food away. Either way, you lose. A couple can spend $600 a month on groceries and eat well. You spend $450 feeding one person. Per person, they're spending less. You're spending more. That difference doesn't feel dramatic week to week, but over a year, it's another $1,800 gone. Death by 1,000 grocery receipts. Insurance quietly piles on too. Single drivers often pay higher car insurance rates because statistically married people are considered more stable. Health insurance is cheaper on family plans. Life insurance favors households. Even renter's insurance can be cheaper when bundled. You're subsidizing lower rates for people who already have a financial advantage. You don't see it as a line item called single tax, but it shows up every month in small, annoying amounts that add up faster than you expect. And then there's taxes, which is where the system stops pretending to be neutral. The tax code was written for households. The standard deduction doubles for married couples filing jointly, but their expenses don't double. They consolidate. One house, one internet bill, one set of utilities. The government rewards that consolidation. If you're single, you're paying full price for independence. Married tax brackets are wider. Joint filers hit higher taxes later. Translation: the same income is treated more gently if it comes from two people sharing a life than from one person standing alone. The message is subtle but clear: pair up or pay more. But the worst part isn't what you're spending, it's what you're missing out on. Your married coworkers aren't just paying less, they're building equity. They qualify for mortgages you can't touch. Banks look at two incomes and say yes. They look at your single income and say not yet. Even if you're responsible, even if you earn a solid salary, you're stuck renting while they're buying. Not because you're worse with money, but because you're playing without a teammate. This is where the compounding damage starts. Renting isn't just expensive, it delays everything else. Every extra dollar you spend on rent is a dollar you can't save. Every year you rent instead of own is a year you're not building equity. Your married coworker's mortgage payment is building their net worth. Your rent check is building your landlord's. That gap widens quietly, year after year, until one day you wake up and realize you're a decade behind, and you can't pinpoint when it happened. When you add it all up, the average single person living alone is spending around $10,000 more per year than someone sharing the same lifestyle with a partner. Rent premiums, food inefficiency, insurance markups, tax disadvantages. $10,000 doesn't sound abstract when you frame it that way. Over 10 years, that's $100,000 just gone. And that's before we talk about investing. Because the real damage isn't the money you spend, it's the money you never get the chance to grow. Compound interest is ruthless. It rewards early consistency and punishes delays. If two people earn the same salary at 25, and one gets to start investing because they split expenses, while the other can't because they're paying full price for existence, the gap becomes massive. Not because one worked harder, but because one had room to breathe. Imagine investing $800 a month starting at 26 because your living costs are lower. Do that for 9 years. That money grows quietly in the background. By 35, you're sitting on 6 figures. The single person who couldn't invest during that time doesn't just miss those contributions. They miss decades of growth on those contributions. Even if they start later, they're chasing a moving target. That early advantage compounds into hundreds of thousands of dollars by retirement. The singles tax doesn't just cost you money today, it costs you future freedom. What makes this even harder is the psychological side. Being single in a couple-based economy messes with your head. You go to dinners where everyone talks about refinancing and joint planning. You listen to advice that assumes shared expenses. You're told to just budget better by people who split everything. You start questioning your competence. You internalize shame that doesn't belong to you. You're not bad with money. You're navigating a system that charges you extra for doing life alone. And the advice industry doesn't help. Most financial advice assumes a household. Savings targets, home buying strategies, investment timelines. They're all calibrated for shared costs. When you can't follow them, you're told you're undisciplined. What discipline actually looks like for a single person is cooking every night when you're tired, skipping convenience because it's expensive, doing everything yourself, and still falling behind because the math doesn't work in your favor. There's no viral motivation video for that, just quiet exhaustion. So what do? You stop pretending the default path applies to you. If the system rewards partnership, you recreate the economics without the romance. That means roommates, not random chaos roommates. Financially competent adults who want the same thing you want. Splitting a 2-bedroom can save you $1,000 a month overnight. That's not regression. That's strategy. That's the difference between treading water and moving forward. You build what economists call a shadow household. You split bulk purchases with friends. You share memberships. You cooperate instead of isolating. You treat money like a team sport, even if life hasn't given you a permanent teammate yet. It might feel awkward at first, but paying 40% more for toilet paper because you live alone is also awkward. One of these choices saves you money. You look at geography honestly. Some cities are financial traps for single people. What's manageable for a couple becomes impossible solo. Moving to a lower-cost city isn't failure, it's arbitrage. Saving $1,500 a month on rent is an $18,000 raise. That's life-changing. And unlike a promotion, it doesn't require permission. You optimize harder than couples have to, not because you're cheap, but because you're compensating for a structural disadvantage. Meal prep matters more. Bulk buying matters more. Maintenance matters more. You can't afford emergencies because you're already paying a premium. This isn't about deprivation. It's about survival in an unfair system. And most importantly, you stop letting shame drive your decisions. Living with roommates at 35 isn't a moral failure. Renting longer than you planned isn't laziness. It's math. The system wasn't designed for you to win easily, but that doesn't mean you can't win at all. It just means you have to play differently. The singles tax isn't going away. It's baked into housing markets, tax codes, insurance algorithms. Waiting for it to become fair is like waiting for rent to drop out of kindness. The only real choice is whether you keep paying it blindly or start engineering your life around reality. Build wealth despite the handicap. Not because it disappeared, but because you refused to let it define you. You're not behind. You're just running the race with a weight vest nobody talks about. Take it off where you can. Split what's splittable. Move when the math demands it. Stack money quietly. And when partnership does happen, if it does, it will be a bonus, not a bailout. That's how you win this game. Not by pretending it's fair, but by understanding it well enough to stop being the sucker at the table.